so upset. Let's love, let's stand. Nothing's ever good enough, not at all. Let's love, hey there, why you always looking so upset? Let's love, let's stand. Nothing's ever good enough, not at all. See you soon, turn up, have fun, I'm a front. I don't really think I vibe with any of you. Catch a ride, now I'm stuck, I'm a diamond in the rough. Always trying to bring me down, I never stress. No love, no smile to be found. You're toxic all around. I don't wanna rush this, I'll make a mount, let 'em round. You can don't wanna make you sad. And I told her I don't wanna stand you when I'm sober. I cheat pretty morning over. Sober my life. How did I think you'd be a good time on mine? Stuck around in the fire, saying you don't know me, talk too much. You're my homie, wait it up. You're such a phony. Had enough, but that's just on me. That's my luck, but that's just on me. I've been on it, I'll be crazy not to start it. And I'd be lying if I said none of this goes to my head. Oh, what's love? Hey there, why you always looking so upset? Let's love, let's stand. Nothing's ever good enough, not at all. Let's love.
Hello everyone, so this is going to be the Guillotine guide. I'm going to preface this. Guillotine performs much better in Seasonal than he does in Extreme, but I'm going to include clips of both. At the start you'll see the Extreme clip, and then at the very end I will leave a clip of how much damage can potentially come from Guillotine. I will preface as well the Seasonal clip that you're going to see. I didn't actually get that lucky. I didn't have the 200% skill power on Executioner there, and those numbers are still appearing, so bear that in mind. It can be much higher. That being said though, going over the relics, I opt to run Mercy, Bonus Coin, and Critical Power Shield, and the fourth one I kind of change depending if it's Seasonal or Extreme. In something like Extreme, I choose to run the Conversion Energy skill module like you usually see in a lot of my builds, but on a lot of these breakers, when you see me having Conversion Energy skill module, if I was to play that breaker inside Seasonal, I would swap it out and put on Medal of Growth. So Medal of Growth gives 5% of your base attack power for every stage, so by the Planet 30 mark of Seasonal, this by itself will have you almost at attack power cap, along with Mercy, so then all you have to do is fight something like Reap in your run, or Giant Strength, and a little bit of like 20% extra attack power somewhere else, or if you're playing something like Lightning, usually Mercy, Reap, and Medal of Growth are enough by themselves to just cap your attack power by the time you get to the end of the stage. This saves you a lot of money, and just helps you naturally scale to get bigger damage in your runs anyway. But that being said, in something like Extreme, I choose to run Conversion Energy skill module. So, at base, Guillotine works best as a skill power based breaker. I will go over why he performs so much better in Seasonal when I get to the skill section, but until then, the sort of relics we want to be looking for within the run are going to be kind of similar to when you're playing someone like Lightning. I say this because of the fact, due to one of the skill upgrades that Guillotine has, you don't really need to be looking for critical chance, so you can just focus on pure damage. So what I mean by that is you want to find something like Exerium Power Chips, you want to find your critical power magazines, and your critical box. Giant Strength, like I've aforementioned before. Guillotine's attack power in Seasonal, you'll get it capped really easily. Just getting something like Giant Strength within the run will help finish it out sooner. And in Extreme, more attack power, the better. Giant Strength is one of the best relics in the game. We love it. We want cooldown stuff, it's a skill build. We want to be able to utilize our skills as often as possible. I got boss target in here just so it makes it easier to stack it in Seasonal, and because the health then couples with the Giant Strength, like I mentioned. That's effect target. If we find any reactors in our run, plus Guillotine does burn. This is just a 50% multiplier per status, so this is going to give us a lot more damage the longer we go into our runs. Other relics to note of to look for, and not to look for. So you don't need to find things like defense suit or retaliation. Guillotine doesn't have 200% defense increasing skill upgrades, so this won't give you that much value. This is actually not cost effective unless you have one of those upgrades. So ignore this, and actually we opt to find stuff like defense suit of merciless attack. The 50% means we're just going to be getting 100 attack power for buying a 120 costing relic. It's very, very cost efficient. Other things to note is looking for stuff like attack defender if you're doing extreme. This allows you, if you buy it in the run and have a venom caster, which is our preferred weapon of choice, this will allow you to stack it up and get even more attack power once you get it. We want to be finding things like Exo Inner Suit, because Guillotine's damage is very spread out, and what I mean by that is it comes in chunks and not constant damage over time effects. This means Exo Inner Suit will be proccing most likely on your higher ceiling abilities and just gives you more burst on demand when you want it. Other great relics are stuff like turret grease if you're doing seasonal, and things like special charge module and any of these shield relics apart from the weapon power stuff. Moving over to skills. So I opt to start with the execution upgrade that makes it so you have a 100% crit hit chance on your executioner and plus 50% damage against burning targets. This is why I choose to not buy critical chance relics within the runs, because all your damage, well, most of your damage is going to be front loaded onto executioner, and it's going to be critting anyway, so we could ignore that and just try and amp up the damage as much as possible. The other important things to find are things like the 200% skill power and the 100% damage on center. These three are his most powerful upgrades. Once you have these, your executioner is going to be hitting like a truck. You don't need to worry about these other two. The cooldown's great, but because you're comboing, you don't really need it, but I would prioritize these three and some of the other upgrades over the cooldown, but it's still not a bad pickup. Other things to look out for are going to be things like his shield charge upgrades. So his shield charge will have an upgrade that gives him crit damage and damage against burning targets as well. This is insane. It's basically a maintenance buff. You keep this up at all times along with some of your other buffs, and then pump it into your executioner, and your executioner will do the majority of your damage. The 300% skill power, this turns your shield charge into basically lightning slide for lightning, and this in itself can do a lot of damage. We need the cooldown so we can help maintain our buff as often as possible, and nothing else really matters here. We don't care for the movement speed reduction too much. I've messed around with this a bit, as you can see, just to test how it functions. It doesn't really do much to bosses, although the 30% attack power reduction can be useful if you're struggling in something like last boss of Extreme, Protean. Moving on over to the Axe Summon. So we want the 200% skill power. This basically turns Axe Summon into Crossfire from Jungler. And we want the 100% skill power on all skills when used. And we also want the burn duration increase. This just makes it so in Extreme, when you're fighting bosses like Sandshark, etc., you're not going to worry about your diminishing returns, as burn lasts pretty long, and having the burn last even longer just guarantees you're going to have it for the phases you want it, and the cooldown will help us keep up our maintenance buffs. Now, contrary to what I usually say, moving over to the counterattack upgrades, there is one in here that I do like, and that is the 100% skill power on counterattacking. Excuse me. If you can proc this in a fight without having to go out your way to slow down the fight or be utilizing annoying mechanics, so if you're fighting something like, say, a Medusa doing its laser beam, or a Sandshark that's just spamming tornadoes everywhere and you can't do anything because it's a beam, proccing this is a great way of getting more damage for the next phase. You can pair that with the resets if you wish, but really, this is all that we're going to be needing, and all these damage upgrades I've mentioned. Now, why does this separate him from the others when it comes towards Seasonal and Extreme? That's due to his passive. Guillotine has a passive where on every single kill, he'll be gaining critical damage. When you put this in something like Seasonal, and you fish for tile sets, and what I mean by that is on the first couple of planets, so being 1, 2, 3, or 4, you look for something like the Jungle Defense mission, or the Frozen Planets Alien Nests event. These planets have a lot of enemies on them, are very quick to clear out, and will stack this passive up to crazy levels. It's quite easy and a quite common thing for Guillotine in Seasonal by the end of the run to be capped out on critical damage and capped out on skill power and capped out on attack power. You can couple all of that along with some targets like Burn Target, and you're going to be hitting well into the millions. And I have a screenshot somewhere that I can probably show you where we did a multiplayer run last season. Nothing has changed on Guillotine since last season, so it's all still the same. Where we were just messing around, seeing how hard we can get him to hit, and we ended up hitting, I think it was 160 million and then a 320 million in a single hit. This is probably the highest number you're ever going to see in a singular hit from any breaker, and only Guillotine can do that. Moving over to Toy Workers. Well, crit damage doesn't really matter. Like, if you're doing seasonal, the crit damage part doesn't matter. Just roll a bunch of skill power or burn targets, honestly. But if you're doing extreme, a little bit extra crit damage, some boss target, swap the weapon power for skill power, and this shield helps us have extra maintenance on top of our critical power shield relic that I opted to run, and it helps a lot. If you're playing multiplayer and you're playing with a Sandman who can shield you, then you can opt to probably swap to any of these other ones and just use similar stats that I mentioned. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the next clip, it's a lot of damage, and like, comment, subscribe. Catch you in the next one.
She loves to lie, and I love to forget that there's more to life than always to forget. But she wants something to happen, baby, I fear. When she whispers in my ear that she wanna see magic pop up right here. Baby, I can show you how to fucking disappear, okay, whatever, I'm gone.